It is a very hot day to you. Hello. Welcome back to the SMWS live stream. My name's Matt Bailey, the National Ambassador for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I'm sure my hair is a mess, but that's okay. You're not here for the fashion, you're here for the whiskey. It's also very hot again in Sydney today. Very humid. I'm not quite in the mood for a whiskey yet, and it is 6 p.m, so it's a bit early. Jazzroids, J-Hodes, good to see you. So yes, a few things. This is not going to be a regular segment, although I've had requests for it to be. I do this every single day, as you know. But maybe it's time for a Q&A, which would be kind of cool. So, Lee Wallace, Whisky Zach, good to see you guys. A bit of an early session today. I have some things on later tonight that I can't make the usual 8 p.m. slot. But you can watch this at 8 p.m. by hitting the stories tab in the right. Or watching this on YouTube, of course, a little bit later on again. Q&A, whiskey Q&A. You know what? I've been asked to do it a number of times, to just do a straight Q&A sessions of questions collected over the last 24, 25 hours since we put the story up asking for questions. So, Ali's Whiskey's good to see you, Ali. Whiskey Saurus, good to see you. I'm a little bit tired today. I didn't sleep very well in this heat, so it's sort of like I look a bit tired and a bit out of sorts. Okay, so here we go. Whiskey Q&A. I've been asked some really cool questions over the last 24 hours, and I'm going to answer in a sort of a rapid fire format, if you like. Mark Teague asks, when's the next Hobart members event? Good question, and I know you've asked that before, Mark. As you know, we had a bit of a changeover between Owen Smythe and Alex Moores as the new state manager. Alex is going to be looking after Victoria, Tasmania, so he might be doing the next event, but I know I've got one coming up in Tassie as well. So we're organising a few things at the moment. There's still a few cogs to turn because there's still a lot going on in the terms of the changeover. I'll get to some of these questions as we go as well, by the way. Sorry, Whiskey Zach, I'll get to that question. So yes, we're working very closely with Alex Moores, of course, our new state manager. He's working at a few event formats. We're working at a few as well over in HQ here, if you like, Australian HQ. And we're going to have some things planned out for you very shortly, some things to announce very shortly. Sarah Kutas, a member in Melbourne, asks, how important is the fermentation stage of making a whiskey, and what does that change in the finished product? Wow, that is a cool question. So she asks, how important is the fermentation stage of a whiskey, and what does that change in the finished product? The fermentation stage of producing the whiskey is extremely important. So this is what she means there is, like the length of the fermentation, the yeast strain added, it bubbling away there, what it means to the overall output of a whiskey, and how it changes it. It changes it dramatically. So generally speaking, shorter ferments, like let's say 40-hour fermentation, that might mean it means quite a sort of like it could be quite a metallic tasting ferment if after a short time, still quite washy, still quite beery, which could affect the finish of the whiskey. Longer ferments generally mean longer tails to the flavour, more fruit, more of that bubbling fruity flavour that you get out of a long ferment. So it does affect the overall spirit quality at the end of what goes into the stills. And what comes off the stills, I should say, in the distillation part. So if you're going from mashing to fermenting, mashing. If you're malting the barley, then I won't go through the whole production process. But if we're just talking ferments, generally a longer ferment will mean a fruitier, richer spirit character. How that interacts with the casks that distillery has chosen is entirely up to them. I'm going to grab some of these questions coming through on the text. Where do you think the Australian whiskey market is going with so many new places popping up and bottles getting very expensive? Whiskey Zach, that's an awesome question. If I'm to answer that completely honestly, I think that the market is actually very crowded at the moment in Australia, and that's not an Australian problem uniquely. The same thing is happening in America. The same thing is happening in Asia. There's distilleries popping up everywhere and wanting to produce, of course, gin, of course, vodka, but of course, a lot of them doing whiskey as well, and a lot of them doing rums as well. So, Zach, I think, I could fill an entire hour with just that question, but I'll give you a condensed version right now. I think we're heading towards a what's often been referred to as a market correction. I think we're heading towards a time soon where there's going to be too much product on the market, and I think we're already seeing it actually from distilleries. I won't say which one, but there was a distillery recently, a mainland distillery recently, that changed the price of their core range single malt from $220 to $99 a bottle. That's more than half off. They moved that price radically down because they're not capturing enough of the market at that high price and competing in that sort of 180 to 280 bracket of a lot of Australian whiskies these days. That's even come down though. I remember a couple of years ago, or 5 years ago, it was like $350 most Australian whiskies. And then, sort of Starwood popped up and it all changed again. You know what? I'm going to do a full episode dedicated to that question, Whisky Zach, so thank you. But in a nutshell, I think we're going to see a market correction this year and next year, as early as like now and moving it more into next year as well. I'll talk a bit about some of the history about that, but that's a really good question. I think with everything happening, we're going to see a market correction. We're going to see a lot more cheaper Australian whiskey on the market soon. And that's not necessarily a good thing or necessarily a bad thing. It's good for the consumer, but whether the quality keeps up with that, whether it still maintains a modicum of quality, which I don't think has been great either. That's another thing I'm probably a little bit outspoken on there. Jay Hodes, believe it or not, it's been hot and humid down here in Hobart, sort of. Well, it doesn't really get that hot and humid in Hobart, but a little bit. Keegan Emmons joined. Good to see you, Keegan. The Whiskey Vault guys on YouTube did a good video this week on what stages of producing whiskey adds what sort of flavours. Yeah, it's a really good one. I'll have to check them out. Whiskey Vault do some really good stuff. If you've not checked them out, that's a great little YouTube channel. They are two American guys. I think they're both American. I don't think either of them are Canadian, but there's two American guys. If you call a Canadian an American accidentally, they sort of go, no, I'm Canadian. It's like, oh, okay. But if you call an American a Canadian, it's like it's a massive insult. If you'll a full episode Whiskey Zach, I'll do a full episode. I'll even tag you on the day I'm doing it. There you go. I think a guy named his whiskey market correction lately predicting this. Yeah, that's true. That was Hartwood. Tim Duckett named one of his whiskey market correction. He's seen it coming as well. He's at the forefront of this as well. He sees what's happening and how the market's changing in Australian whiskey. That's a cool question. I'm going to dedicate a whole episode to that. Andrew Petrino asks, will Sydney be getting an outturn preview tasting in future? Andrew, yes, but that's kind of up to the partner bars. I mean, I'd love to do one with Sherp Bar, but I think we might do one with Sherp Bar coming up. Maybe for like May outturn or something, or maybe April outturn, because it's just this event was sort of proposed by Whisky and Almond, and we're sort of going along with it. It's a great chance for Melbourne members to get in, learn a few things off us of what's coming in the outturn. You really need to have a partner bar with the kind of strength that they do to just confidently throw that out there. And look, if there's enough demand from Sydney members to do an outturn preview, then we'll do one, and I appreciate the feedback. A user named 1374BM88, not a real name obviously, asks pipettes or water jug. I don't have either on the table right now because I'm resetting the office a bit at the moment, but I'm assuming the question means, do you use pipettes to add water or do you use a water jug to add water? You've seen me use a water jug. There's a few up here for adding water to my whiskey before. I'm not a huge fan of pipettes. I find for beginners into whiskey, so they don't absolutely douse it with a water jug. Yes, the pipette's good because it controls the supply of water a bit. But I find they just feel a bit scientific-y and a bit sort of like takes the passion, takes the love out of it. Makes it look a bit like a science project rather than enjoying a whiskey. So that's why I tend towards a water jug. You can control it if you're just careful and don't sploosh all your water into your glass. David Rogers asks, how come some whiskies at say 46% ABV can be hot? He writes, while some cask-strength society ones are perfectly drinkable at 66%. I did touch on this a few months back, I remember. A lot of it comes down to how that spirit was made, the spirit integration, and bottled when it's ready. So there's three things to touch on there. How the spirit was made. Is it long ferments? What's the shape and the size of the stills? What's the barley strain they're using? What country that spirit's been made in? So many factors that go into it. And then, of course, the second part is how well integrated is that spirit with the cask? I would argue that some distilleries work better in ex-bourbon. Some distilleries' character works better in ex-sherry. It does vary, and sometimes there are exceptions to the rule. But I would say, as an example, here's my example, I would say that a distillery like Kilchoman excels in ex-bourbon and doesn't do as great in sherry. Whereas I'd say a distillery like Springbank does okay in ex-bourbon, but excels in ex-sherry. So yes, you'll find different distilleries have their sort of sweet spot with which casks seem to integrate better with their spirit type. And of course, there's wild subjectivity in that as well, but there is also like some objectivity about which ones seem to integrate better. And then you have the third one, which is cask and spirit integration. Sorry, I think it's rattling. All this glass around the table. If there's all this, I guess, spirit integration comes down to a lot of the fact that the cask might be a really lovely refill cask, and the spirit is just mellowing in that cask and providing a lot of sort of like beautiful sort of integration of spirit and wood. Sometimes it might feel a bit forced. Sometimes it's a bit like, here's a 5-year-old whiskey that's 46%, and it tastes hot in the mouth. It tastes sort of like it's got sort of this hotness to it. That's not good. That means that it's probably not integrated properly. It's not a great cask selection. That's why you often find with cheaper independent bottlings, lesser bottlings, you find that they are often hot. And we like to think that our whiskies are integrated at the ideal proof that they're meant to be at, which is exciting for us. But I've never really had too many society whiskies that I would label as hot. There have been one or two that I've gone, gee, that's a wild whiskey. It's got the ferments, the fruitiness, the spirit character is wild. In fact, 5228 comes to mind, milking a cowfish. But it was sort of like there's others that I can think of that it's just like they do appreciate a drop of water. But sometimes even the hot whiskeys, sometimes 46% whiskeys, you add water to them, they're still hot. Anyway. Brick joined, Matt Music joined. Good to see you. Good to see you, Max Gen 927. Okay, that was David Rogers' question. Train Hobbyos. I reckon that might be you, Scott. Anyway, some train hobbyist called Train Hobbyos asks, pardon me, do you ever add ice to your whiskey? And the U was capitalized. Do you add ice to your whiskey? Yes, I do. From time to time. There's a time and place for everything. And my rule of thumb with how to enjoy whiskey, as a sort of a general sort of statement, is enjoy it how you best enjoy it. Now, I generally enjoy my whiskey neat, out of a copper, out of a society glass, out of a spirit glass, out of something that can provide a good nose and context to it. But you don't have to do that. If you've bought the whiskey, whether it be at a bar or at home or wherever it is, you enjoy it how you want to enjoy it. So sometimes for me, on a really hot day and you're not really in the mood for a beer or something, and you still want a nice whiskey, I'll pour a bourbon into a nice tulip tumbler with a single cube of ice or something like that, and just have a bit of fun with it and see what works best. And sometimes it just hits the spot. Other times I'd say no, that it'd be absurd to add ice to a whiskey. But it all comes down to what whiskey it is and what you prefer. Alex asks, what's on the Archie Rose Gelato afternoon? Well, in about, I'd say a week and a half. So yeah, late next week. So Saturday week, I should say. Yeah. So not this Saturday, the Saturday after is the Archie Rose Gelato afternoon. I'm pairing up 5 Messina world award-winning gelatos with 5 single cask society whiskies. I saw someone comment on the event thread on Facebook saying this is, you would never do that with whiskey. You'd never pair gelatos and sorbets with whiskey. It's blasphemy or something. I was like, well, you're in for quite a ride then. I mean, we do all sorts of events at the Society. We do sort of more old school masterclass formats like, even Andrew last year hosted an event called Old School, which was great. That was like, doing a traditional masterclass like we used to do it. And then other times we'll do sort of dessert pairings or food pairings, or even just mixing things up, some cocktail pairings, things like that. We've done so much of it over the years, and this is just another excuse for us to do something really interesting. Work with Messina, work with Archie Rose, and I think the event's going to be a lot more than you realise on the actual day. But it's an afternoon event. It's Saturday, the 8th of February, 3 p.m. Would love to see you there. I'm going to be opening some cracking good whiskies, including a Taiwanese single cask from the Society, and including a ridiculously tasty ex-wine cask whiskey. I won't reveal what they are yet. They're sitting on my desk over there. That's what I'm looking at. But my last little announcement in this Q&A, this is just a quick one today. As I said, I can't really make it later on tonight. My last little quick announcement for today is I have here a Society hand fill. Now, I got asked this question a lot on our stories when I uploaded a photo of it. I'll bring that in nice and close so you can see what's going on here. One side it says the Society cask, and on the middle we have the monogram, and down the bottom it says SC66. It's a second fill PX 10-year-old single cask whiskey from a quarter cask from inside the vaults of Leith. I have one bottle of this. Well, I have two. One I'm going to pour around. So I've got two, the second one's just, you can probably see it just above my head in frame there. This sealed one, however, is going to be given away to either a new member who joins between now and the end of February, or I'm going to give it to an existing member who refers a new member. So you've all got an equal chance to win this one of two bottles ever. Probably one of the smallest outturns we've ever done of any bottling. But it's all yours. It's a single cask Highland peated whiskey from a sherry cask. It's a pretty brutish whiskey. I've had a chance to taste it, and it's just marvelous stuff. So that's I'm giving that away. That's a very high value, lovely little giveaway, and give away that to a new member who joins between now and the end of February. More details up on our Facebook page in the next few days. So it's a very great share. And Grant, good to see you, mate. Hope all is well over in BF land, or should I say in your case JD land. But I'm going to give that away. SC66, a second fill PX. It's a quarter cask from a finished in a quarter cask at the vaults. It's a hand fill. It's a Society hand fill. I'm going to give that away to a new member. So join up if you want. Have a check out the membership options online. Just go to smws.com.au. You can always watch this quick little Q&A that I had today over the last 24 hours. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 questions in from members, which was great. Well, I got a few more than 7, but they're the ones I had to pick out. And then you can always watch this up on the stories on Instagram again later if you wish. Otherwise, you can catch this on our YouTube channel a little bit later on. If you're an existing member, you have a chance to win this by referring a friend and get them to put your name in the referral box online. Or if you're just a new member, every new member who joins will automatically be entered into the draw. And I hope to see as many Sydney members as possible at our Archie Rose Gelato whiskey pairings in a week and a half time, week and a bit. And I'll see you all. I'll see you all tomorrow night. Are there one last question coming in now from J Herds? Any bourbon releases coming out soon, Matt? Yes, yes, and yes. There's some B casks coming through. Not this month or next month, but our whiskey casking team are spending a lot of time in the US, in Tennessee, in Kentucky, even in New York, a New York distillery they're working with, which is really exciting because there's some great spirit coming out from all over America now. But a lot of time in Tennessee and a lot of time in Kentucky working with distillers there on some more B codes coming through soon, which is really exciting because I love our B codes there. The bourbons that we bottle at the Society, single cask strength bourbons that we get through. We haven't seen too many lately, but we'll get a nice run of them again soon. So keep your eyes peeled there. Lots of demand for bourbon at the moment, and lots of demand for good rums as well. Okay, that's all from me right now. Have a great evening. I'm sorry it's a bit of an early session. If you missed it, you have to catch it up on the story later. Cheers.